Let's start this, shall we? With the major disappointment of the latest Nintendo Direct and the obsession of not wanting to make true physical games on Nintendo Switch 2, I wanted to address the situation on game keycards because, quite frankly, it's getting ridiculous. And it seems like third-party developers cannot decide if they want to keep doing game keycards or not. Some third-party developers are offering Switch 2 upgrades with the Switch 1 version. Some of them are just straight up refusing to do so, and they're asking you to double dip on a game that you already own. Some of them are actually doing it for one game but not the other. It's just straight up a mess right now. So in today's video, we are going to talk about the game keycard situation and the future of game keycards. Are they going to stay? Will third-party companies double down on game keycards? Let's find out, shall we? But before we find out, I want to know what you guys think about game keycards. Do you think they're a great idea? Do you think they're here to stay? Let me know down in the comments. And at the same time, 99% of you are not subscribed to the channel. So if you like what I do, if you like my content, just drop a sub, drop a like. It helps more than you think. Thank you so much. Let's move on to the video. So if you have been living under a rock and you don't know what a game keycard is, let me explain. Game keycards are basically a digital game in form of a physical game. On the surface, they might look like a physical game, but they're not. They are a digital voucher in a form of a physical game that will download the entire game on your Nintendo Switch 2. So there is actually no data on the cartridge, and ultimately you find yourself buying a digital game in the form of a physical game. And it comes with a lot of problems. First of all, you don't own your digital games. You buy the license that allows you to play the game. So if ever they want to remove the game from digital storefronts because of licensing issues, they have the right to do so. And there's nothing you can do about it, unfortunately. And ultimately, you won't be able to access your digital game anymore if ever you did not have it downloaded on your console. So if ever you decided to delete the game from your console for some reason or another and decide to remove it from digital storefront, you won't ever be able to access the game anymore. And it sucks because you've actually purchased that game. You've actually spent money in order to own that game digitally, but ultimately you don't own the game. You own the license to be able to play the game. Basically, you're renting a game at this point. And before you come screaming at me in the comments saying it never happened, it happened more than you think. One of the most recent example of that is Super Mario 3D All-Star, which was a time exclusive on Nintendo Switch 2 for only 1 year. And after the 1 year it was released, it was delisted from digital storefront and you could not buy it physically anymore because all of the copies were sold out. So the only way you can purchase this game right now is if you go to the third market and you buy a physical version of it. But let me tell you something, it is expensive. And what sucks the most, it's the only way to play Super Mario Galaxy and Super Mario Sunshine on Nintendo Switch 1 and 2 as of right now. I know Sunshine is eventually coming to NSO, but at the time of this recording, it's not out yet. And I know that this game can still be accessed if it's not downloaded on your console. But when it comes to most other games that were delisted, they do not share the same fate as 3D All-Star, unfortunately. But with game keycards, it is the worst of both worlds. Not only that you buy a physical copy that you don't own, but if one of those copies gets delisted from digital storefronts, you will most likely never be able to play that game again. And it's really scary because one of the certainty of buying a physical Nintendo Switch game is owning your game. And whatever happens with the digital copy of that game, you are not affected ultimately because you own that game. It is fully on the card. But with game keycards, unfortunately, you are relying on the digital version of that same game. So if ever it gets delisted or there's licensing issues or anything else, you are screwed. And unfortunately, another problem of game keycards is that they're not future-proof. Let me explain. Unfortunately, since the game keycards are tied to the eShop, it needs an initial check in order to be downloaded. But what happens in 20 years when the eShop shuts down or the online service or the server shuts down and they can't do that initial check anymore? Well, unfortunately, you lose access to your game. Remember, there's nothing on that card. All it does is it triggers a download on the eShop in order for you to download that game. And what's even worse is that you need to put the cartridge in your Nintendo Switch 2 in order for the game to work, even if it's a digital game and it's fully downloaded in your console, which is ridiculous at this point because you're buying a digital game. You're not buying a physical game. And I'm not even finished. Since it's not a real physical game and it downloads the entire game on your Nintendo Switch 2, it fills up a lot of space. And we all know that the Nintendo Switch 2 has only 256 gigs of data, which is not a lot. And the extra storage options are extremely expensive. So let me get this straight. You're basically buying a pseudo physical game that you don't own, that will most likely not even work in the future, that fills up your Switch 2 and requires you to buy extra storage that is really expensive. All of this for a physical game. It really sucks, and it's the worst of both worlds. Every aspect that sucks about owning a digital copy is there, plus having the inconvenience of owning a physical cartridge at the same time. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. Having a physical game is not always the best thing around. It takes space. It's not entirely future-proof because it can break. It requires you to always physically swap out your games, which can be annoying sometimes. It's not a problem for me, but I know a lot of people think it's really annoying. It takes a lot of space. Look at my background. Look how many games I have. Like, if you don't have the space, digital games might be a better options for you. And I'm not even done. So you might have noticed that most of the game key cards have a Switch 1 counterpart where everything is on the cart. And buying the Switch 1 version of those games and then having some sort of upgrade to play the Switch 2 version would be the easy solutions of our problem, right? Right? But unfortunately, most third-party companies straight up refuses to sell upgrades for them. They are forcing us to double dip if we already bought the Switch 1 version. The fact that I have to buy another copy of Sonic X Shadow Generation because Sega refuses to offer paid upgrade for Nintendo Switch 1 owners infuriates me. And I'm not asking the upgrades to be free. Let me be clear here. I don't mind paying $10 to $15 for a Switch 2 upgrade of a Switch 1 game I already own. That is not the problem. I am not asking them to be free. I am just asking them to release a upgrade digitally so that I don't have to buy a game that I already own again. But other third-party companies like Square Enix offers upgrades for Final Fantasy Tactics and Dragon Quest III Remakes if you buy it on Switch 1, but does not want to offer a free upgrade or a paid upgrade for Dragon Quest Remake 1 and 2 because it's getting a game keycard release again, forcing us to buy a game keycard if we want to experience the better frame rate and the better resolution that the Switch 2 offers. And I'm starting to see a pattern here. Most of the games that only has a Switch 1 physical release will get either a free upgrade or a paid upgrade. But as soon as they're releasing a game keycard version or a Switch 2 version of that game, they are straight up refusing to offer free or paid upgrades for that game. Except for Sega over here. And it honestly really sucks. What happened to third-party developers offering free upgrades to help with the transition between two console generations? If I remember correctly, during the transition between the PS4 and PS5, we were getting regularly PS4 games upgraded to PS5 for free. And at some point, they became paid upgrades, which is totally fine, honestly. What happened to not being greedy? Why can't we have the same treatment when it comes to the transition between the Nintendo Switch 1 and Nintendo Switch 2? And look, I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I know exactly why they're doing this. It's because it's super cheap to produce a game keycard. It's the reality of things. We all know that Nintendo are offering two types of cards. One that is, I think, 64 gig, and the other one that has basically no data in the cartridge. The one that has 64 gig is super expensive for third-party developers to actually buy and produce for their physical game. But unfortunately, the reality is Nintendo made game keycards to help smaller developers or indie devs to release physical games on the Nintendo Switch 2, not third-party developers like Sega or Square Enix to cut costs down. And honestly, I'm gonna be really honest here. Even with all the disadvantage that the game keycards have, if an indie developer can financially release their game physically on Switch 2 thanks to the game keycards, I have zero problems about that. But the problem is that everyone is taking advantage of it. All of the third-party developers are using game keycards in order to cut down costs for their physical games. And I understand Sega doing it for Puyo Puyo Tetris. It's like a 3 gig game. They don't want to spend the 64 gig cartridge in order to publish this game physically on the Nintendo Switch 2. But at least offer a paid upgrade for Switch 1 owners. I own this game on Switch 1. I don't want to pay $64, or I don't know how much is it in the US, in order to have the upgrade. I understand that it's cheaper for you to produce, but at least meet the consumer halfway. And nobody's buying the game key card. I see so many people just buying the downgraded Switch 1 version instead of buying the game key card because they straight up do not want to encourage that kind of behavior. They don't want to encourage the fact that third-party developers are being greedy. And even with all the backlash that game key card has and the low sales that it has, third-party companies are doubling down on game key cards, which is ridiculous. Because after the most recent Nintendo Direct partner showcase, it turns out that most of the games that were announced are going to be game key cards again. And look, I have two theories about that. First of all, I think these copies were already in production, so they don't really have a choice to release them as game key cards. And the other reason is third-party developers want us to adopt the game key card format because it's really cheap for them to produce. If they can cut costs in the future and not pay the premium upgrade for a physical game on Nintendo Switch 2 that Nintendo is asking, then of course they're going to take the cheaper options. And at some point, third-party developers will stop making Switch 1 versions. So if ever they want us to buy physical Switch 2 games, they would rather just do game key cards instead. But the reality is we're not gonna buy it. I am for sure never gonna buy a Switch 2 game key card again. I bought one and it's Raidu right here. Raidu Remastered, The Mystery of the Soulless Arm. And I wanted to test it out. I wanted to know what it was. And unfortunately, I'm not impressed. Having to deal with the downsides of owning a digital game and physical game at the same time is not for me, unfortunately. I like them on my shelf. That's why I bought one. I wanted to see what it was. And at this point, I'd rather just buy the downgraded Switch 1 version than a game key card. I just hope that we get physical versions. Please. Alright, I know it's been a long time since I've posted a video and I wanted to do a quick video for game key cards because I'm tired of this situation. I'm gonna make more video in the future. I have a big video coming up soon on the channel. Thank you for listening to me ramble on for like 10-15 minutes. I don't know how long this video is gonna be. But yeah, if you like my content, if you like me talking about random Nintendo stuff or random gaming stuff, do consider subscribing to the channel and liking the video. It helps a lot. And on that note, guys, thank you so much for watching and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.